Philosophy. Boy, does this word conjure up a bunch of thoughts and emotions, especially within the chiropractic profession. But my challenge here, and what I am going to represent to you, is that by the time we're through with this three-part video series, that you will understand like never before the significance, the importance, the application, and the practicality of this thing called philosophy. I think philosophy's gotten a bum rap, quite frankly. And what I'm going to prove to you over these next three videos is that philosophy will build your practice, it will grow your life, it will put money in your bank account, it will be the most important concept that you can hope to embrace. Philosophy is a tool for success. So one of the things I think we need to understand up front here is that there's a difference between the academic and sort of ethereal and abstract philosophy, which is something that I have studied, and the role of the application of philosophy in a practical way. And what I've created here is what I call the philosophy formula. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you this formula that will show you how to apply philosophy in your life and in your practice so that you can grow and have a better, more meaningful, and more prosperous experience. I'm a very public figure within the chiropractic profession, but through the course of these video trainings, I plan on sharing some stories that are personal stories that I really have never shared from the platform before. Why? Because I believe that some of my own experience is important to understand as to how I got so involved in philosophy and how I started to incorporate it into my life, and what some of the challenges were that I was facing that it helped me overcome. Let me start out by saying this. Number one, by nature, I am really more of an introvert than an extrovert. Now, for some of you, you might think, how can that be? I've seen you stand up in front of 6,000, 8,000 people and give presentations in front of some of the largest audiences within the chiropractic arena, and sometimes even outside of the chiropractic arena. How does an introvert do that? And the answer is, my purpose that drives me is so strong that I overcome what my biases are. So what does that mean? Am I purely introverted in a neurotic way? No. But let me tell you something. When I'm up on that big platform and I give that presentation, and I do so seemingly in a comfortable way, when I get off that platform and I walk through the hotel lobby and I get to the elevator, when you get into the elevator with me, I'm the guy who's standing back in the corner, who's staring down at the floor, looking up at the elevator lights floor by floor, not saying a word to anybody. I'm not the person who comes into the elevator and says, oh, hey, what's your name? How are you doing? Are you having a great day? It's not my nature. I really am more biased towards being an introvert. But what's emerged as a result of my philosophy and purpose is that I've learned to become more of an omnivert. Now, if you happen to be an extroverted individual, then great. Then you'll be able to express your philosophy and turn into success in a more natural way. But I want the introverts to understand that philosophy is a path towards your expression that will help you succeed regardless of your particular personality style. And as you come along with me on this journey through these three videos that we're going to present here, you're going to see how that works. So let me tell you this. A couple of things I think you want to understand. Philosophy doesn't care what your personality style is. It doesn't care if you're a driver and expressive. It doesn't care if you're compliant. It doesn't care if you're an analytical. The reality is, philosophy applies to all human beings, and it does so in an extremely profound way. Now, we'll be digging into philosophy in the realm of chiropractic more specifically so that you can apply it to your life to create great practice success and to break through some of the barriers you might be facing right now. But ultimately, it applies to your entire life. It's going to apply to your parenting. It's going to apply to your relationships. It's going to apply to your health and fitness. It applies to everything. There's nothing more foundational or fundamental than this thing called philosophy. One of the important things I'm going to be teaching you through this video series is how to map your philosophy. In essence, the philosophy formula is a mapping process to help guide you from point A to point B in the varying realms of your life. So as you apply the formula in your practice, then maybe more specifically in your new patients, in your finances, etc., you will see that it's a guide to take you from where you are to where you want to be. If you were somewhere in the world physically and you wanted to go from where you were to another place, what would you do? You would pull up Google Maps, and Google Maps would take you there. In this case, what we're going to do is I want to take you somewhere in your consciousness. So if you want to go somewhere in your mindset, in your consciousness, and go from where you are to somewhere new that will yield results in the real world, that's a philosophy map. And that is what this is all about. The philosophy formula is about mapping your thinking, your belief systems, and taking you from where you are now to where you want to go. So a couple of key understandings. Number one, philosophy is practical, as I said, meaning that it's not just theoretical and doesn't apply to your real life. So very critical that you understand what philosophy is, and more importantly, maybe, what it isn't. And number two is a big one. No, it's not a big one. It's a huge one. If you're writing, this is something you want to write down. Why is philosophy so practical? Why is it so critical? Why must I make the effort to create a philosophy map in my life? And the answer is because contradictions in your basic philosophical premises will lead to destruction in your real life. And the amount of destruction is relative to the level of the contradiction. You will hear me repeat this over and over and over again, so let me say it one more time. Contradictions in your basic philosophical premises will lead to destruction, and the amount of destruction is relative to the level of the contradiction. This is highly critical, and when you learn the philosophy formula, you will be able to identify contradictions in your life, and when you remove those contradictions, you start to see breakthroughs occur, and you go to the next level. Nothing is more foundational than philosophy, and that's point number three. Nothing is more foundational. What do I mean by that? If you say, well, I ride with my purpose, your philosophy precedes your purpose. Well, wait a minute. I learned a new procedure to get new patients. How well that procedure works is going to depend on your philosophy. It's not procedures that get a result. It's who you are doing the procedures that get the result. And when I get to the whiteboard in a little while, I'll be teaching you why that is true and why that is so. So let me go here. A little bit about my own experience. Philosophy takes you from confusion to focus. An experience in my own life that I've never shared before publicly is this. When I was halfway through chiropractic school, I took a break. Why did I take a break? I got into chiropractic school very excited, very focused. I was one of those chiropractic miracle cases. As a teenager, I had a terrible health challenge. A chiropractor had helped me when I was a medical failure, and I got the bug, and at that point I said, that's it, I'm going to chiropractic school. This is what I want to do with my life. About halfway through chiropractic school, I was doing this local access cable TV program, and back then that was a pretty innovative new thing. Not many people were doing it. And it was called To Your Health. And I would discuss these varying concepts, and I was on there with varying guests every week. We'd be doing interviews, etc. And sometimes they were with medical doctors. And I had gotten to know some people from a local university who were involved in the medical school there, who really were impressed with me for whatever that reason was. I was, at that point, I think 21 years old. They liked what they heard. They liked my energy and my enthusiasm. And they said, why don't you go to medical school? And then you could always go back to chiropractic school, and then you could have the best of both worlds. You probably have heard these types of things before. As a matter of fact, you may have been confused about your practice in some way, saying, well, why can't we offer maybe some of these other types of services, maybe integrate medicine in? And right now, I'm not here to say that that's right or wrong. I'm just here to say you need to check your philosophy and check your values and decide if that's a contradiction or not before you make that decision. Nothing I'm going to be doing in this video training series, if I could say this, is about me moralizing and telling you what you should do, or maybe I could say more specifically, me telling you what your philosophy should be. It's not about me telling you what your philosophy should be. It's about me teaching you a formula so you can discover your own philosophy. That's what this is about. In this particular case, I got unfocused. I got a little bit lost. I got sort of drunk with an opportunity, and I put opportunity in front of values because my values maybe weren't as clear to me as they should have been, which meant that my philosophy wasn't as clear to me as maybe it should have been. So what did I do? I said, wow, this is an amazing opportunity. They started looking at how they can set up scholarships for me and even get my medical school paid for, etc. So I literally completed the quarter I was in at Life University and then withdrew from school and started to put together my plan to go through medical school with this wonderful opportunity, with this scholarship that I would have gotten. And then I still said I was going to come back and complete chiropractic also, but this opportunity was in front of me, so I thought I should take it right away. After taking some months off and thinking about it and digging deeper in, I started to soul search a little bit. It was maybe the first time that I started to explore what my true foundations for my life were, what my values were. And I had to discover, what did that mean to have values? Now, I can't say at that point in my life I understood philosophy the way I did now, but when I reflect back on it, I realized I started to check some of my premises and I started to identify contradictions. I didn't have those terms in my head there. I didn't even understand them. I wish I did. It would save me a lot of pain, a lot of money, and a lot of time. But nonetheless, I got off a path. I didn't really have a map. I started to reflect upon my own purpose and my values to the degree that I could with the equipment that I had at 21 years old. And I started to recognize that I was doing the wrong thing. Even though I had this incredible opportunity, I at the same time was wandering away from what my life was supposed to be about. So I re-enrolled in chiropractic school, and then I finished chiropractic school, and I moved on from there. Here's the point. Philosophy can take you from confused to focus. And I think all of you would agree with me. I think anybody would agree with me if I were to ask the question, can somebody who is confused succeed? And the answer is going to be no. Would you say that focus is an element of success no matter what you're doing? The answer is yes. So if there's a tool that can take you from being confused to being focused, would you agree that that would enhance your success and your probability of success on an ongoing basis? The answer there is, of course, obviously yes, and that's what philosophy does. Hopefully by now I've convinced you of the importance of philosophy and how it showed up in my life personally. Now I want to actually get into a useful tool that will help you really understand the relationship, or the path, if you will, from philosophy to prosperity, what I call the 5 Ps. So I'm going to give you this overview. We're going to go to the whiteboard and I'll give you the overview. It's going to be kind of quick, but I think you'll get a good sense and a good foundation of the sequence of how philosophy unfolds and leads you to prosperity. And that's really going to be the core content of what we're going to do here in this first video. In the next video, I'm going to review the philosophy formula for money. What does that mean? Let me tell you this. You can get everything else right in your practice, but if you have contradictions in your philosophy with money, which the majority of chiropractors do, incidentally, and quite frankly, the majority of human beings do, then you still don't get to success and prosperity. So, and if you've been one of those people that say, God, I've been doing this right, I'm doing that right, but we're still always challenged with finance and money, it's because you have a contradiction somewhere in that philosophy. If where you are is not matching your sense of who you are, then you have a contradiction. And that is very true in money. You'll hear me say that over and over again. So we're going to do that in the next video. And then in the video after that, we're going to talk about the philosophy formula for new patients. And that's going to be a fun one, because the number one need of chiropractors, in their own mind at least, when I ask, what's the number one need for your practice? What's the answer I get? More new patients. And then I start to dig into their philosophy surrounding new patients, which they don't even know they have, quite frankly. What do you mean philosophy of new patients? It's about just going out there and marketing, right? You don't think that your marketing is completely reflective of a foundational philosophy? Of course it is. But if that philosophy is not clarified, how effective can your marketing be? So we're going to talk about the philosophy formula to generate loads of new patients. That will be the video after that. And I'm really excited to present that one to you, because I love getting more people into chiropractic offices. So let's go to the whiteboard. I'm really excited to show you this. What I'm about to present to you, I have taught to literally thousands of chiropractors. This was a part of what we taught at Total Solution at CLA, and we had over 6,600 chiropractors come through that. So I was tempted to tell you a story about Dr. Jones or Dr. Smith and what impact this had. I'm not going to say hundreds of chiropractors were impacted by this one little formula I'm going to show you. I'm going to tell you thousands were. Story after story after story about how they struggled with getting to prosperity, how they had a hard time reconciling what to do in their practice and what procedures to incorporate and what things they should use and leverage to make money and what things they shouldn't do, etc., and where the confusion lied around it. It's a common tale in chiropractic that we get out there and we spin our wheels wondering, go in this direction, go in that direction, move this way, move that way. I believe that this particular map I'm about to lay out is something that can change it all, as one profound thing that we'll get to at the end of this that is one of the biggest contradictions I see in the chiropractic profession in general. And for you, as you're watching this right now, you might go, oh my God, I got it. It's like a breakthrough concept. It's not complicated. It's actually very simple. You're going to see it. But when you get there and recognize it and process it and maybe talk to your significant other about it, or maybe your staff and other people who are important in your life, you're going to find that this can be pretty riveting. So stay tuned on this. I call this the 5 P's to prosperity because there is a sequence of these 5 P's. Can you guess what the first one is? Philosophy. So here we go. We've got this pyramid we built here. There's 5 slots. The first one is philosophy. Why? Because philosophy is the most foundational thing. There's nothing below this. There's nothing that's more foundational in your life or in your experience than philosophy. As soon as you start to think, as soon as you start to choose, as soon as you start to direct, as soon as you start to do anything, you're in philosophy, whether you know it or not. That's why you need to map your philosophy. That's why you need a philosophy formula. That's why I want to teach you these things. So you've got philosophy at the foundation, the most foundational thing. So what comes or emerges from your philosophy that's very important, that will lead you to prosperity? The next P is purpose. Purpose comes from philosophy. Now, you hear a lot, and rightfully so, about the purpose-driven life and a purpose-driven practice and being on purpose. I created On Purpose with Dr. Kent in 1994. It's still going today. So we are big believers in purpose and living a life on purpose. And I clearly understand the connection between purpose and prosperity and fulfillment spiritually and all those kinds of things. But purpose, and this is the thing that most people don't consciously recognize in an explicit way, purpose emerges from your philosophy. When you learn the philosophy formula, when you learn the mapping process, basically you start to say that there's a foundational branch of philosophy that I'm not going to get into the technical terms now, that will come later, but in another video, not this video. But you have these branches of philosophy, so you have to literally say, okay, the first branch of philosophy is this. The second branch of philosophy is that. Then the third branch of philosophy is something that I'm really excited to teach you all 3 of these because it's a part of the mapping process, and again, it comes in a later video. The third branch of philosophy is where your purpose emerges from. So you have to have all these foundations in these branches of philosophy before you get to purpose. And if you try to choose a purpose without understanding those clearly, that's where you can get off purpose. That's where you can start to wander. That's where you can't get brought back to the center. That's where you lose your compass, if you will. So it's important to understand that that purpose emerges out of philosophy. Okay, so now we have philosophy which leads us to our purpose. Once you have your purpose, the next step is that you have this. Psychology. Psychology is very important to create success. There's a lot of people out there who are teaching you about how to manage your states. How if you're in a down state, you got to get into an up state and you got to manage your physiology, etc. State management, emotional management. There's so many courses on that, and they're great courses. However, they're dealing with effects and not causes. Here's a very profound thing. Please listen to me carefully right now. This one thing can change your life if you didn't already understand it. You see these 2 things here, philosophy and purpose? They are cause. Philosophy and purpose are causes. Psychology and these next 3 or next two after psychology, are effects. If you start managing your psychology as a cause, you've got a philosophical contradiction that will take you down. It's like a drug. If you're saying, oh, okay, I'm just going to get all enthusiastic. I'm going to pump myself up, pump myself up, pump myself up. Like you go to a seminar on a weekend, you get all pumped up, you come back. What happens 2 weeks later? You're back down again. The drug wore off. When you manage psychology and your emotions as primaries or as a cause, it's going to wear off like a drug. It is an effect. It's philosophy and purpose that determine cause, and then psychology is the first effect out of that cause. Now, when I get into the full course of the philosophy mapping, I'll get much deeper into that. It's probably an hour by itself, quite frankly, but ultimately, I just need you to understand this much right now. Philosophy and purpose are causes. Your emotions are responses to those causes, because this is where your values get crafted. Purpose is something that is an expression of your action in those values, and then how you feel about things is an effect of that, not a cause of it. One other little key here: if you're somebody who has mixed emotions, it's a sign that you have a contradiction down here. You have conflicting values here, which is why you have mixed emotions here. So if you were to go and map your philosophy down here, you'd understand why your psychology was confused. Now that you understand the sequence between philosophy, purpose, and psychology, the next all-important P, and it is a critical one, is procedure. So, procedure is what happens after you've established your philosophy, and emerging from that philosophy comes your purpose, and then that starts to shape your psychology and your emotional states. Now it's time for procedure. So what do I mean by procedure? I mean your procedures and your practice. I mean, what do you do when you open the door and everything else that happens? I'm talking about your new patient procedures. I'm talking about day 1, day 2. I'm talking about your daily interactions. I'm talking about your marketing procedures. I'm talking about your operational procedures within the practice. I'm talking about marketing. I'm talking about every procedure. So what do some people try to convince you? They'll try to convince you that, oh, I can get you successful because I will teach you new procedures. Now, it's not that good procedures are wrong. We need really good procedures to succeed. However, procedures dealt with, again, as a cause and not an effect will not get you anywhere. If you're a 20 patient a day chiropractor and you learn better procedures, all that's going to happen is you'll get better at seeing 20 a day. You won't go to 40, 60, 80, 100 or wherever it is you want to go, because it's an effect and not a cause. If you don't get down here and fix this before you work up here, you're not going to get anywhere, which is why you probably have a lot of frustration if you've been on that merry-go-round of trying these new things and they work for a little while and you end up back to where you were. So again, let me just reiterate here, and I'm overemphasizing for a reason. Philosophy and purpose are the ultimate causes. These three things here are effects. I'm going to write vertically. These are effects. So the procedure is the effect. How well the procedure is going to work is an effect of your philosophy first and your purpose that emerges out of that philosophy. So here we go. We're at philosophy, purpose. Now we get into psychology, your emotional states, your energy management, all those things, up to procedure. If you get the procedures nailed, now the next P and the final P is the one that we're all aiming at, and that is called prosperity. I'm going to just abbreviate it because I can't fit it, but prosper. Prosperity is the final P. Listen to my words very carefully here, please. Prosperity is the ultimate effect of who you are, not the cause. If you make prosperity the cause of who you are, then you have things backward. It's a huge contradiction. Here's the aha that I was talking about earlier. This is the proper sequence to go from philosophy, which is really important, which you have to have a process for, a mapping process for, all the way through to prosperity. The majority of chiropractors and the majority of people, quite frankly, have this pyramid upside down. They start with prosperity and try to back into the other items. You are reversing cause and effect. Prosperity should be the ultimate effect of who you are, not the cause. I could spend hours on examples for you. For example, Michael Jordan. How many $40 million Nike contracts do you need before you don't need to play any more basketball? Or maybe we'll be a little bit more contemporary. How about LeBron? You think LeBron can retire today and probably live out the rest of his years and want for nothing and probably leave enough money for many generations past him? Of course he can. He just now got traded. I think he's going to Cleveland. He's going to make more money there, have more endorsements, and accumulate more money. Why? He doesn't have to. If LeBron said, listen, prosperity is my cause. Once I have enough of it, I don't want to go to work anymore, then he wouldn't be signing a new deal. He'd say, okay, I'm done. But LeBron has got a purpose. And his purpose, which comes from his philosophy, his sense of life, he's got a purpose that says that this is what I do. Bill Gates, and maybe we're a little upset with Bill Gates with all he's doing with the Gates Foundation, vaccinations, etc. But let's just look at him as, for many, many years, the richest person in the world. How did that happen? You think when Microsoft went public and Bill Gates was worth $250 million, if prosperity was his cause, at that point would you say, okay, I've had enough, I'm ready to retire? Instead, he kept going to work. When he was the richest person in the world, worth over $50 billion. Do you know how much money that is? No. You cannot comprehend $50 billion in personal wealth. It's beyond comprehension. He's worth $50 billion. He's working. He's getting up and going to work every day. Not as the CEO, not as the president, but as the thing that was his purpose all along as the chief software architect for Microsoft, because he loved that. His philosophy and purpose led him there. And there was no amount of money, of prosperity, that would buy him out of that. Prosperity was the ultimate effect of who he was, not the cause. How many more bad movies does Sylvester Stallone have to make? I mean, he's still at it. And quite frankly, I kind of like Sylvester Stallone movies. I got the whole Rocky box set and DVD, etc. But the story about Sylvester Stallone, he was a starving writer and actor. He had the script Rocky. He was tending bar. He could barely make ends meet. And he's offered, back in the 70s, this was a lot of money, $400,000. I might be a little off on the number, but I think it was roughly $400,000 for the Rocky script. But they said he can't play in that script. In other words, they wanted to buy the script and then have a different named actor that was famous to play in that script. You know what Stallone did? He said, no, it's a package deal. If you want my script, I am Rocky. Now, he could have made a lot of excuses saying, you know what, the next script I'll play, I'm starving right now. $400,000 is a huge sum of money. I'll take the money as compared to going for another night attending bar and trying to make ends meet. But his philosophy and purpose were clear, which structured his psychology to be strong. As a result, he proceduralized himself to say, here is how I'm approaching this and how I'm going to structure, remember, structuring this deal. And he ended up in prosperity. Why? Because he had his pyramid right side up. He followed it properly, and it launched one of the most successful careers in the history of Hollywood. So I am telling you that when we get desperate, when people feel the pinch of finance, when they get worried at night how things might work out or insurance is going away, and all these types of things that happen that run through chiropractors' minds that play psychological tricks on them, what happens is our pyramids start to turn like this, and we start confusing cause and effect. Prosperity is the ultimate effect, or should be, of who you are. If your pyramid is upside down, you will never have prosperity. And again, in philosophy formula, I can go deep, like an hour into this. I have an exercise that I call the $5 million question that really helps to drive this home and understand it in a personalized way for you. But for now, given the scope of what we have to do here, philosophy, purpose, psychology, procedure, prosperity, these are the 5 Ps. And if you've been paying attention to what I've said, and if you will have the gumption to reflect upon this in your own life and recognize whether or not your pyramid is upside down or right side up, this alone can and will change your life. So this has been an overview of the implications of philosophy. Hopefully, if I did my job, I've changed your mind about what philosophy is, how important it is to your life, and the fact is that it can cause massive breakthrough success for you if you will bother to embrace it. So from this now, we're going to go in and have the interview series of this video, which will help drive some more of these points home. I really hope that you got a lot of value out of what I just presented. I think it can and will change your life because I've seen it happen over and over again for the past several years, thousands of times, but I want it to happen for you. So thanks for watching this so far. The next segment's coming up right now. Welcome to the interactive portion of this video. Now that we've gone through and kind of had the solo presentation, I felt that interacting on this material would be very beneficial, and I've invited to the conversation a chiropractor who interviewed me a while ago for a project, Chiropractic for the World, a nonprofit organization that's doing some great work. And he had done such a great job in his research and asking the right questions, etc., that I felt like he really was a perfect representation of an aspiring chiropractor in the field who's going after success and expansion and thinks from that context. He's a 2002 grad from Life University. He has over 40 chiropractors in his family, so I think that that's really cool. He is the founder of Epoch Vancouver, so you can see he's very engaged in chiropractic in a variety of ways, and that's Dr. Alain Dessonnier. So Alain, thank you very much for doing this for us.
Hey, thanks so much. I really appreciate being here, and being in practice 12 years, I know that I've seen some of the challenges that a lot of us face, and I'm also in a more unique situation that I restarted in practice again about a year ago. So I feel like I'm going through the challenges, struggles, and stresses of opening a new office. So I think from a new grad to people that have been in the field for a while, I think I have a pretty broad understanding of what's going on. So I'm really excited about being here.
Thrilling opening a new office, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. So with that, let's get started. So when people talk about philosophy and having a philosophy, like it seems like such a challenge to grasp for somebody. And why is it such a challenge for some people to grasp?
I think in large part it has to do with our experience growing up in our culture. Philosophy generally is not taught in grade school, high school. There's courses in college that people will sometimes take. And when people in our culture hear the word philosophy, it kind of conjures up these visions of old guys in robes or what have you, that are talking about abstract ideas that really have no application in the practicality of modern life, so to speak. You think about Socrates or Plato or Aristotle or any of those characters that you hear from antiquity. It doesn't really lend itself to a contemporary conversation, and it's really unfortunate because understanding what philosophy is and its application in a practical way into life is something that is significant. And I think that there's a lot of suffering that goes on in the lives of human beings, and in this context, especially in the lives of chiropractors, that is a byproduct of just not really understanding philosophy. If we were to define philosophy, it's defined as the rational investigation of truths and principles of being, knowledge, and conduct. So basically, it's exploring the fundamentals of life. And as I mentioned in the earlier segment, it's so important because when you have contradictions in your basic philosophical premises, the only possible result is destruction, and the amount of destruction is relative to the level of the contradiction. So through philosophy, we can use it in an extremely practical way as a tool for achievement and success, and specifically in chiropractic practice, yes, but generally in our lives in total. So one other, I think, dimension of the question that you asked that's worth mentioning is in the chiropractic culture, philosophy sort of has this controversial standing. There are dimensions of the profession that celebrate philosophy and the philosophy of chiropractic, if you will, and they really wear it on their sleeves in a very overt way. And then there's an entire faction of the profession that are, for lack of a better term, anti-philosophy. They don't like those chiropractors who wear the philosophy on their sleeves. And there's a kind of a muddled thing here in that there are some people who are running around saying that they're philosophically based as chiropractors, and in that there's a faction of them that are very dogmatic. It's not that they're philosophical; it's that they've accepted premises without critical thinking, and the consequence of that is that they become sort of zealous in a way that is not intellectual and not really philosophical by nature, although they call it philosophy. So it's kind of this messy thing that is simultaneously important and at the same time, I guess, disruptive to the culture of the chiropractic profession. So my goal is to try to clarify clearly, that's kind of redundant, clarify clearly, but to clarify with certainty what the role of philosophy is in chiropractic, what the role of philosophy is for the chiropractor, and give it a practical formula for implementation of philosophy for massive achievement in chiropractic practice.
So you mentioned something really important, I think, that's to talk about, is that you talked about when you develop your philosophy and developing an understanding, you talked about some like outcome measures. And so some people have the idea that, well, either I'm scientific or we hear this stuff about chiropractic being evidence-based versus philosophy-based. So what's the difference there, and how do we start to mesh that together?
So with that, I'm going to right now, we'll just let this run. Let me get one book off my shelf that I think will answer that question. So excuse me while I just get to my bookshelf over here. All right, so you can see we're just letting it all hang out. We're not trying to make a slick video here. We want to be real. So I have been in the heat of battles and conversations and debates relative to this whole thing about science versus philosophy and evidence-based care versus philosophical chiropractic and these types of inane concepts. What's interesting is that when I went to school, and probably I think it's still prevalent in the profession today, it seems like you have to be in one of two camps. Either you're in the philosophically based chiropractic camp or you're in the scientifically based chiropractic camp, as if these two things were mutually exclusive, and nothing is further from the truth. Anyone who thinks that science and philosophy are mutually exclusive understand neither. So just to give you an example, this is a book that I've been reading. First of all, let's look at the thickness of the book. Okay, so it's not like just a little pamphlet. And what is the title of the book? The Philosophy of Science. There is no context for science without a philosophy. The idea that science or evidence can exist in the absence of philosophy is absurd. You have no reference point and no way to draw conclusions about your science unless there are philosophical premises on which it is based. So you can see a lot of pages here from some really, really smart people getting into the philosophy of science. And I'm not recommending that you have to read books this thick to understand it. I am just having you understand this. Do not accept the premise that in order to embrace philosophy or be a philosophically oriented chiropractor means that you have to give up your scientific approaches or orientation in chiropractic, or that somehow you're not validated or evidence-based in your care or your approach. Now, the implication of philosophy goes well beyond just the science. The implication of the philosophy goes towards your practice success. It goes towards your finances and money. It goes towards your relationships with your patients. It goes toward the choices you're going to make about patient care. It's going to go toward your marketing systems and your educational systems and your reactivation systems and your referral systems. Your philosophy pervades all of these things. Who you hire, what their duties are. There's no part of your chiropractic experience that is not touched by your philosophy. So think of what that means. That means that if you are not philosophically oriented, or if you don't have the tools of what I refer to as the philosophy formula, you end up in a compromised or handicapped position to try to effectively and congruently express what it is your vision is for your practice and your success throughout your career. So it's a really important thing.
That's great. So as we wrap up here, I want to ask one more thing. Something came to mind that was really powerful for me, in that I think And you can tell us a little bit more about, whether I'm understanding this correctly, is that once we have like developing a formula, like a philosophy formula, that it does become more applicable to our everyday life, like not only in our clinical life, but really in our family life. Because I know I had heard you talk about when you were in a debate with Stephen Barrett, and one of the questions you had asked, I extrapolated that, and I started asking that in my relationships or in other aspects of my life. Like you said something to the effect of, well, how would you know? Like, what would you accept as proof? And so when I go into, say, time with my girlfriend, if she feels like she's not getting what she wants or she's not getting what she needs and she's unhappy, rather than me trying to spout out all this stuff like, well, no, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I just take a step back and I'm like, okay, well, how would you know if you're getting that? So is this what you're talking about? Developing a formula really allows you to apply it to everything in your life?
Yes, and this is where you're being very astute, where you're seeing the wider applications of what we're talking about here. Philosophy touches every part of your life, whether you know it or not. You have a philosophy, whether you know it or not. As a matter of fact, the people who say they'd like to see philosophy extricated from chiropractic don't recognize that they just proposed a philosophy when they said that, or a philosophical premise at least. So the bottom line is, yes, it is very applicable to all dimensions of your life. And what I love about having a practical philosophy formula, you see, I don't consider myself a philosophical theorist, so to speak. Somebody who's going to get into academic philosophy and teach the generic forms of philosophy or the histories and systems of philosophy. I look at myself as an applied philosopher, as a practical philosopher. Someone who said, I understand now the importance of philosophy, and now I need tools to utilize my understanding of philosophy for my success in obtaining my goals, the things I want to achieve. And philosophy is a tool for achievement and should be used as such. So what you're talking about, like in your case, you're with your girlfriend, and maybe there's a bit of conflict or whatever it is that might come up. You're saying, wow, you know what? These tools of philosophy, knowing how to check premises and ask questions, not in a manipulative way, but literally in a way of discovery and of processing, that by doing so you can make your relationship better. By doing so, you can make your parenting better. By doing so, you can make any dimension, your health. Imagine what your health and fitness would be if you didn't have a particular philosophy about how to approach it. So it affects all parts of your life, and that's why I'm really, really excited about bringing the philosophy formula in. Because what happened? Philosophy can be considered kind of complicated, but I've made it very, very simple. It's having this formula just to run varying aspects of your life, your practice, your success through, that will manifest observations to say, wow, okay, now I see something I didn't see before, and I can create congruency and alignment, and the consequence of that is that your achievement grows and succeeds, and you get unstuck in areas where you've been stuck.
Well, that's awesome. I can't wait. So what can we expect to talk about on the next video?
Well, I guess it's kind of along the lines of this. Next video is on philosophy and money, and I guess I'll just kind of, I don't want to say tease you with this, but hopefully it creates some anticipation for you so that you'll have the motivation to want to watch that next video, which is going to be extremely impactful and practical. I'm going to be teaching about the relationship between your money, your financial life, your wealth, your abundance, and philosophy, and how if you have your philosophy set up right, it's unlimited as far as the power and how robust your wealth and money can become. And at the same time, how if you have conflict or contradiction in your philosophical premises related to money, wealth, and abundance, how that will keep you down and keep you in survival mode and limit you as far as the amount of wealth and abundance you should achieve. It's a really, why am I so passionate about this one? Because I see chiropractors working hard for years, decades, providing value, adding to people's lives, doing all the right things, and what happens? They end up still on the edge of broke, on the edge of survival, because they can't reconcile a humanitarian business called chiropractic and the idea of profit and money, which is something that they should be using to expand the range of that purpose in chiropractic. So enough of a kind of preamble into what the video is, but that's what we're going to be dealing with. And I will dare say, and I don't want to seem cocky about this, but I've taught it to so many thousands of chiropractors and seen the impact that by watching that video, it could literally change your financial destiny. So I look forward to presenting that.
Cool. Well, me too. I really look forward to it. I mean, already on this video, I've gotten a whole ton of notes that I've taken already about this, so I can't wait for the next one. So appreciate you all tuning in, and can't wait to see you on the next video.